So just on those teams of aged care workers, how many are on standby and how will they be dispersed?
Well, there's teams available in every state and also some teams that are available particularly for remote areas, because if you look at the circumstance with some of our remote Indigenous communities, it's really important that we have the capacity there where we need it, when we need it. And this is about being able to respond very quickly to a circumstance where if we have an outbreak, where we have staff that can't go to work because they've been in contact with residents, or we have a circumstance where it might be the staff that have contracted the disease, we need to be able to have people to come in quickly. This is something we've been working on for a little while now, because we've seen that occur in a couple of other circumstances. So where a facility can't find the staff from its own resources, we now have the capacity to come in and provide some assistance.
And I'm assuming here that they'd have to be quarantined beforehand. I mean, how will residents in aged care facilities be protected?
Well, they will need to be. We will need to be ensured, and the facility will need to be ensured that they are free of COVID and any other respiratory disease for that matter. And we've put some pretty strong measures in place to ensure that those who are going into aged care facilities are free of respiratory disease. We've said from the 1st of May, anyone who goes in, staff or any other worker or visitor, will have to be vaccinated for the flu. The whole point of this is to ensure that we don't get incidents of COVID-19 into facilities, and in the circumstance that we do, we have the workforce available to deal with it.
If there is an outbreak, like there was at the Dorothy Henderson Lodge, can the system handle it?
Well, that's the point. At DHL, Dorothy Henderson Lodge, there was some assistance provided from New South Wales. They sent some of their workforce in there. This is supplementing that, bearing in mind that the entire health workforce is having to deal with this. We're treating this as though it was one broad workforce. We need the surge capacity available at the point in time we need it to be able to deal with the circumstance that arises. And I think the situation that's occurred in Tasmania at the North West Regional Hospital is an indication of how quickly this can get away if you're not on top of it very, very fast.
Just in recent days, I've spoken to some people who are looking after people who are in home care, and there's a lot of patients who are refusing to get home help at the moment because they're basically scared. So how concerned are you about that, and what are you doing to make sure that they're looked after?
Well, we are concerned about that, and in our weekly meetings with the aged care community, the providers, they've indicated that in some circumstances, in some services, that's up to 30% of residents saying that they don't want people coming into the homes to provide care. So what we've instituted in that circumstance is that they will get a care call back from the Older Persons Advocacy Network, OPAN as we call it, to see that they're okay, to see if there's anything else that they might need, whether it's assistance with shopping, any other particular needs that we can provide to them, because we don't want them to be completely isolated. We'd like, in most circumstances, for them to be accepting the care. So the conversation will also be about be confident in the provider. They are required to take measures to ensure that the workers coming into your home are free of COVID and they understand infection control, so you can safely receive the care that you've been assessed as needing. So there's a range of things that we're working on there to make sure that people do continue to get the care that they need.
Minister, Michael Outram today has called for a hardening of biosecurity at Australian ports. As Minister for Aged Care, it's society's most vulnerable, some of society's most vulnerable. Would you support those increased measures?
Well, we're taking advice from the AHPPC in respect of all of the measures that we're taking. I think that's the appropriate thing for us to do. We've seen the circumstances that arise where the biosecurity measures are lax. We need to make sure that we protect Australia, the Australian community, and manage this virus outbreak in the best possible way we can. And I think the appropriate thing for me to do as a minister is to take the advice from the experts that sit around the table at the AHPPC, and that's what I'll continue to do.
So you support those measures?
Absolutely. I mean, the work that's being done by the AHPPC is very, very good. I think it stood Australia in extremely good stead. And it's those whole of community measures that have protected the community quite largely. It's one of the reasons, for example, that we don't have and we're not seeing what we saw in aged care facilities in other countries around the world. It's not just what we're doing in aged care facilities, it's those broader whole of community measures that ensure that we don't see an uncontrolled spread of COVID-19 through the community. That's actually serving our entire community in good stead, and I think we should continue to follow that advice.
If I can just switch to your sports portfolio at the moment, do you support the early return of the NRL?
Look, Peter, I would love to see a kick-off happen as soon as possible, or in my case as a person from an AFL state, the bounce occur as quickly as possible. But again, I'll just refer back to the point that I just made about the AHPPC advice. And if you look at the circumstance at the Northwest Regional Hospital here in Tassie, where we've had a significant outbreak within the hospital, over 1,000 people in isolation, patients having to be moved to another hospital so that we can manage that circumstance, I think it's a pretty stark reminder of how vigilant we need to be. We should be following the advice from the experts. We'd all love to see our particular sport up and active as quickly as possible, but the whole purpose for everything that we're doing at the moment is to manage the spread, control the spread of COVID-19, and I think that the advice of the experts so far has served us as a nation extremely well. We should continue to follow that advice.
So you are against the early return of NRL?
I'm happy to see it happen as soon as it possibly can, but on the advice of those experts that have stood us in such good stead in the management of the virus as it works its way through the country. So
basically, it's the health officials who should decide this.
Look, I think the NRL are a bit ambitious with their date that they've set, to be frank. But I'm not against them making plans for a return of competition. I think we all would like to see that. Return of sport to our communities will do us a lot of good. Sport is going to play a significant role in the community recovery of after we work our way through COVID-19. It's a really important part of the connection of so many of our communities, particularly in regional Australia. It's the heart of so many of those communities, and you only need to look back a couple of months to how we were looking to sport and sporting organisations and clubs in bushfire-affected communities to help them recover. Sport will play a huge role in the recovery from this, but at the appropriate time.